Let's get into law school. So we had our favorite Chad, Kyle Rittenhouse, in multiple interviews saying that he wants to go to law school. Now, for a while, I've been talking about this, and I thought about doing a separate video, but I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it on this video. I'm going to explain law school and how you have a plan and how you are successful in law school, because Kyle, I think Kyle's like normal kids, right? They don't think before they say what they're going to do. They go, oh, I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to do X or Y. You need to have a plan. Okay? You need to have a plan to be successful in law school. It is impossible to be successful in law school without a specific plan to execute exactly what you want. So, what would I advise Kyle? Kyle's saying, I want to be a defense attorney. Okay, Kyle, here's the preliminary question. Number one, have you even looked into what it requires to go to law school? And now I know it's pretty simple. A lot of you guys probably know, hey, if a joker like Nick or me can going to law school, hey, anybody can come to law school, right? Well, that's not necessarily true. What happens is you've got to go to an undergraduate degree. You got to get that 4-year degree. Then you got to take the law school admissions test, the LSAT, right? Now, after you take the LSAT, you got to go to law school. You got to pass the bar in the state you want to practice in, or a state that has reciprocity with the state you want to practice in, and then be admitted to the bar. And you have to look into the process. How does the bar screen you out? What are their ethical rules? So in Rittenhouse's case, he's got multiple barriers at which he could be stopped. So Rittenhouse specifically could be stopped, let's say, by, I don't know, not getting admitted to law school. Or let's say he fails the LSAT, right? So first he's got to pass college. So he hasn't gone to college. He hasn't finished college yet, right? So he's got to do that. Then he's got to pass the LSAT, take the LSAT, get a high enough score to get in where he needs to get in. And I'll talk about that. Then he's got to get through law school. Then he's got to pass the bar, right? And then they've got to actually look at him and look at his past. And he's got to disclose everything, including being charged with murder, right? And in the state in which he lives, it's pretty woke. It's pretty woke. And frankly, they may not let him in. And bar associations, right? And I've talked about this multiple times. Bar associations, even in base states, yes, Texas, I'm looking at you, Florida, Georgia, a lot of other states, they're becoming increasingly left-leaning, increasingly woke. And ones in the northern states, those are woke as shit. A lot of these professional organizations, why are they so woke? Well, because there's a lot of people who are activists in there, and people who tend to be center or right tend to be individualists. They tend to not get involved in organizations. So the people who get involved in these organizations, the people who end up participating in these communitarian activities, tend to be left-leaning. They tend to be pretty woke, right? Dunk said here, I've noticed attractive women get off light in their sentence and unattractive get harder since this is true. Yeah, there's a bias. This is very true. Attractive people, there's a bias towards attractive people, which is the argument for making yourself as presentable as possible. That's why you wear a suit. That's why you clean yourself up. You go into an interview, you look good. People have a natural bias towards attractive people. That will be something we never get rid of. So present yourself in the best way. If you're coming for an interview, if you're coming for a date, whatever you're doing in life, business idea, you're trying to sell something, look the best you can. And look the best you can. Present yourself as best you can if you're trying to sell something, right? I mean, that's a key point. And you should go suitless for Nathan DeBruyne. Oh, that would actually be interesting. That'd be interesting. Yeah, and there's a point in which you do go suitless, right? Once you've already in the job, once you're already, settled in it, I don't have to have anybody hire me for this. I wear a suit because I want to. This is actually very comfortable. This is what I wore to the office every single day. I wore, a shirt with no tie because I'm from Florida. It's hot as shit, right? Which is the opposite of Korea. It is currently freezing my balls off here. But, one's in the chat if you guys are somewhere that's cold right now. 2, if it's pretty warm. 3, if you have no idea where you are because you just woke up and you're pretty hungover. But yeah, here it's freezing. And I've actually had to get some more clothing made for me because I have to get clothing specifically tailored for me because I'm 6'6" and there's no clothing that fits me in Korea. But you want to, when you're looking at law school, when you're looking at where you're going to go, you want to make sure make sure that you're looking very, very specifically at all those steps, because bar associations may not admit you. And by the way, they have no duty to admit you. The bar associations have no duty to admit anybody. They can say no, and there's no appeal. You can't go to the court and say, make them admit me, right? Now, in certain circumstances, there may be some claims or lawsuits, some civil suits, right? Especially if you're a lawyer, you lose business and there's like lack of process. Okay, there might be some claims in there. But typically, the bar associations are giving wide latitude to disbar somebody. And we've seen this in cases where they've disbarred lawyers, attorneys who've spoken up against the mandates. We've seen that. All right, I'm going to read this one, Craig, but I got my eyes on you. He says, F you, Gators. I mean, F of you, go Vols. Actually, you know what's funny? Craig, what's funny is my cousin was a Vol. I actually love Knoxville. They're actually moving though. They're moving back to Florida from Tennessee. I told them not to do this. This is a silly idea, but this is, you can tell your family to do something and they cannot listen to you. I told them, I said, I have a cousin. She's raising a daughter, right? And as well, I think they're having another kid as well soon. But so they're going to be raising two kids, right? One is 100% a daughter. And they're like, oh, we think we want to move back. She's from the city and he's a country boy, like a country firefighter, just total country boy. And she wants to move back to Miami. And I said, because she grew up there. I said, do you think it's a good place to raise your kid? Because I was raised in Miami and I saw more drugs than than a man should know, right? And it was very, very hard to deal with as a kid and grow up. And I'm lucky I got out of there without a crippling cocaine addiction, right? But it is what it is, but you can tell people, hey, don't do it. And they're going to do it because they want to do what they want to do. And oftentimes the unfortunate thing is they're probably not thinking of their kids as much as they maybe should be. All right. So I'm seeing a good amount of ones in the chat here, but there's some fours as well. Okay, a good amount clocked in there. Tampa, Florida. People don't like the cold poll. I like the polls, so I'm gonna keep them going. So it's cold as fuck in Serbia right now. Okay, cool. I actually need to get to Serbia. I actually meant to visit Serbia about 4 or 5 years ago. One of the places I definitely want to check out. And it's good to know where you guys are. No, now I know why you like Korea. You're the Hulk. Yes, I'm not the Hulk. I'm like Godzilla, except for this is in Tokyo. This is Seoul. But good to see everybody in here. Minor says, unless you plan on going to big law or becoming a federal judge, the tier of law school you attend doesn't matter. I went to one where I got in that gave me a ton of contracts in the city I went to practice in. Okay, we're going to get to that, by the way. I'm going to get to that part. So let's just jump back into the law school thing. So Kyle Rittenhouse or anybody wants to go to law school. What are you going to do? Well, the first thing I want you to do is skip over law school, skip over everything else and go to the jobs. And I'm going to share a resource. This is just one resource. This is not the be all end all of resources, but this is just one resource that you can look at. So for example, there's salary guides, right? This is the Robert Half salary guide. It's a larger one that's pretty national. You're going to want to look at localized data in the market you want to practice in. But if you're going to start and say, okay, well, I just need some baseline data. How much do lawyers make? How much can I spend on law school, right? Because that's a pertinent question. How long do you want to be in slavery to your law school debt, right? If you're borrowing like most people do, I would encourage you to try to get high enough grades and a high enough LSAT score, i.e. retake the LSAT. If you need to do it 3 times, that's fine, right? I mean, they don't really start averaging your score till you go over 3 times. So take it 3 times. Right? Get the highest score you can get and then apply and get those scholarships, right? Get that money, get that free money. So if you want to look at some data, look at people who are gathering the data. Now you can look at job openings in the city you want to practice in, but also just looking at national data. For example, looking at these law firm salaries, when you're looking at 25th percentile under this one, which shows, hey, this is actually really well set up. It's a good visual. So it shows 25th percentile is little to no prior experience in the position, still developing relevant skills, demand low. Average experience has the majority of the skills, moderate. 75, above average experience has most or all the necessary skills, may have specialized certificates, high. Extremely strong skills, expertise, experience, often over and above what is necessary, has special certifications, demand very high. So for most people, you're going to be looking at the 25th because when you're starting out, you're going to be really low. So This is in general in the United States, right? In general, at a law firm, right? You're looking at, hey, if you're a first year associate making $60,000 a year, right? $60,000 a year, which, we can talk about that. People feel different ways about $60,000 a year, but most people, 90% of people who are going to become law school students, or law school students that are looking for jobs, are going to get hired, honestly, in this range, in the $60,000 a year range. That's a very common range. And yes, it's an average, right? There's some people in big law who are making $150,000, $200,000, but those are averaged out with the state attorneys and defenders, the bingers of the world, that are making 30 and 40K. My ex, when she was working for the state of Florida, she was literally making 30K a year, right? I mean, she could have been a teacher and made about the same as she's making as an attorney. Insane. And imagine if you've taken out $100,000 or $200,000 in debt. I mean, that math just doesn't add up. How are you going to pay that? And you're not going to. Now, there are certain forgiveness programs. After 10 years of practicing, you get stuff forgiven, but you have to think, do you want to be a slave for 10 years? Right? How are you going to finance this? Think about the money stuff, the practical stuff first. You need to look at the positions. So you're going to look at the positions. You're going to say, okay, what do I want to do? Oh, in-house. Wow, those positions look pretty good. Hey, they look like they're starting a little bit higher. Maybe it looks like the lifestyle might be better. Maybe you do some research, right? Well, what companies am I going to want to apply for? What prerequisites are they going to want? What knowledge are they going to want? What background are they going to want? And here's the scary thing. You may need to start looking at this during undergrad if you want to go to law school, because some jobs have prerequisite knowledge. They have prerequisite degrees. If you want to be a patent attorney, you need very specific knowledge. You probably should have a hard science background because that's going to be required. So go in there and look at what you want to do. Understand the difference between litigation and transactional work, right? There's a huge difference between doing real estate and doing, civil litigation, criminal litigation, right? Mark Richards could not do my job. He wouldn't know what the fuck he's doing, right? Because I operate in the corporate world, and I've operated in the government world as well, but mostly in the corporate world. He's not going to know what the hell he's doing. He's not going to know how to do anything, right? If a Korean company asks him to form a subsidiary in the United States that has a particular tax structure, right? Is he going to know how to do that? No, he's going to wreak havoc, right? You have to be very specific at what you want, where you want it, and what you want to do. The next thing I would say to do, after you've looked at the numbers, you looked at the data, is you are going to pull out and you are going to actually go to a freaking law firm. Or if you want to go in-house, go to a company, try to speak to somebody, reach out to them to just shadow them or spend a day in their life or maybe intern with them. Reach out to actually get experience in the place where you want to go. I believe in apprenticeships, right? I believe in the apprenticeships. And for example, if Kyle Rittenhouse wanted to be a defender, right? He wants to be a criminal defense attorney. I would want him to go and do that and see if he actually wants to do it. Because being a criminal defense attorney isn't as sexy as you believe it to be, right? Alyssa says, if I could go back, I'd go to college though. Well, some people would, some people wouldn't. In fact, nowadays, a lot of people are not going to college and they're making more money, right? There's a good point right here by Mandarin, which says, if you go to law school full-time, you're restricted on the numbers of hours you can work a week. Yes, that is true. However, you can do a couple hours of work a week in a law firm. By the way, I play law in easy mode, as Nick likes to say. I'm an ADA, which is why Binger, Krause, and Potter's ADAs tick me off. We have much higher ethical duty. Yes, I totally agree with that. By the way. And, shout out to the people who have a higher standard. And by the way, I have been to Tokyo Disneyland. It is so much cleaner. And they're so much nicer. By the way, the other weird thing about the Japanese is both guys and girls are really into Disney. When I lived in Orlando, it was all the girls were interested in Disney. And the majority of the Disney employees were female. And the male employees were, they were LGBTQA++, XYZ, right? So that was something that kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. It's a situation where you're seeing a similar thing play out in the legal field. You're seeing the majority of people in law school now are women. And this is something that I think we're seeing a lot of people bamboozle, unfortunately, women into saying, hey, you want to be a boss babe? You want to be Elle Woods? You want to have the power? You want to wear the pants? You want to be the daddy here? Call her daddy. In this case, be a lawyer. That's what they're saying. It's a complete lie because in many cases you're a slave. You're a slave to your job. You're a slave to a corporation, or you're a slave to, chasing insurance claims, right? You're pretty much State Farm's employee without being their direct employee. It's something they don't tell you in law school. And when they don't tell you that you might need 10, 15, 20 years to pay back your debt, I think it's very disingenuous and does a disservice. And people like Kyle will be in a lot of trouble if they follow that advice. Dylan says, have you visited Ireland and would you? I have not. I do definitely want to. I have a ton of Irish friends. They are all extremely based, although a lot of them have left Ireland. A lot of them say, hey, Ireland has kind of gone downhill. I still want to visit. I like to see for myself. I don't always take everybody else's advice, but I do like to see for myself. Serious question. I don't know how lawyers destroy their old paperwork, but I found in my dumpster 2 years of files from divorce to EPA regulations and company bankruptcy. So in most states, there's records retention guidelines, right? So you have actual amount of time that you keep records for. So my old firm, we had boxes on boxes on boxes, and we kept them for a certain amount of time till the statute of limitations ran or other records retention guidelines, because we also worked with public entities, governments. And if you work with governments, you have government record retention guidelines where you actually have to retain your records. Now, nowadays, you're allowed to scan documents in a lot of states. You're allowed to keep them electronic, so they'll be kept electronic as well. Okay, finishing up on law school. The last thing here I want to talk about law school is you need to understand where you're going to practice and where you're going, what market you're going to enter, what bar exam you have to take, right? Because that dictates what law you need to study. So if you want to study in, practice in Louisiana because you just like those crawdads and you like that Cajun food, right? You're going to have to study both common and civil law. It's a hell of a long bar exam, a super long bar exam, right? It's not the most hard to pass. That would be probably, I think California still has one of the highest fail rates. That is because they have a lot of shitty law schools there, like the Johnny Cochran School of Law or Glendale School of Law. And they also allow people like Kim Kardashian to apprentice in order to take the bar. Whole separate debate. We can have that another time. But make sure you're looking at that because you can actually study for the bar while you're in law school. You can look at the subjects on the bar, which I would recommend you do, and actually just get ready for the bar, right? Because that helps. And there's such a huge advantage to just being ready for the bar, having taken it, and knowing what you're going to do. Also, look at the type of people in the city that you're going to practice in. Are they assholes? Are you going to work with them? Is this the type of environment you want to get involved in? Different firms have different environments. Big law does pay a lot, but you're going to be ground out. Typically, most people quit big law in 2 to 5 years, right? And they go to a medium to small law firm. They don't take it. They pretty much just go there for the credential on their resume.